something I've wanted to address for a little while. So not too long ago, Georgina Rose, darling, not to be confused with Regina George.
So it's settled. So you can go shave your back now.
Put out this video. And she's also posted a little bit about this happening to her, and this is something that we've seen with other leftist men. Not too long ago, Wulff did this against J.K. Rowling. These leftist men, and it's typically leftist men, I haven't really seen it from leftist women. I'm sure it also happens there, but probably not as much, because toxic masculinity, we tend to be a little more aggressive. But they use the same toxic traits that we're supposed to be fighting against to bash people they disagree with. This is counterproductive. So let me explain a little bit more. There's something I call paper straw activism. Paper straw activism, it's the little things that are necessary, but they're not the big things that are actually going to change society for the better. Making the average citizen going through Starbucks use a paper straw that gets soggy after like 5 to 10 minutes does not solve climate change. It's a small factor compared to the corporations that pollute, that deregulate and lobby and dump carbon in the air and pollute waters that still have not been cleaned years ago. As far as I know, Flint, Michigan's water is still nasty, by the way. What's that been, like 10 years or something crazy? Going to a paper straw might be a small change, but it's not big enough to actually affect change, right? Same thing goes with policing language, right? It's good that we police language. The language reflects the culture, and language can influence culture, but it's a small thing. And it's really something that as you progress in your inclusivity, as you progress in your decolonization of your mind and your understanding, that you start to use more inclusive language. It really doesn't happen the other way around. You don't start to use inclusive language and then start to decolonize your mind. Like me, for example, when my worldview shattered, when I realized that libertarian ANCAP type, I wasn't fully an ANCAP, but ANCAP type philosophy and understanding and worldview was wrong and did not benefit me, at that point, that's what kind of broke me and then sent me on honestly a downward spiral that made me do what I do, which is research the crap out of things and then get to where I'm at now, where I have this better understanding of things and better understanding of the chains that weigh us down in society, so to speak. And that's the thing. You have a lot of these so-called leftist men who will attack right-wing women and use misogynistic language. I think there was one guy, some chuddy looking dude on Twitter, that specifically went after Georgina and told her she needed to start becoming a sex worker because she was anti-sex worker. I don't know, it was a weird train of logic, but that doesn't do anything to help you. What that does is that pushes that person who's, let's be honest, probably a filthy centrist who doesn't realize that because the Overton window has shifted to the right, they're on the right? That's something that you only realize through the deprogramming. But that pushes them further right. Like recently, Georgina Rose has platformed Survive the Jive. Again, I'll go over that when I do a video just kind of talking about her views, and more of an, honestly, the video is going to be more of an appeal to her, but because I prefer to teach rather than call out. Survive the Jive is a known white nationalist, tweeted about phrenology. I mean, he is not a credible source, but people that feel that they cannot be accepted by the left will often go to the right because, as we know, fascists love to recruit. And when you are super aggressive with people like that, you will push them toward the right. Which again is another reason why I prefer to teach rather than call out. If I do make like a call out video, really what I'm doing is throwing out what I know and my understanding and hoping that person will come to reason. So if you do find yourself wanting to use that rhetoric, right? Wanting to use ableist rhetoric, wanting to use sexist rhetoric, wanting to engage in the toxic things that we're supposed to be fighting against, self-examine. Think, okay, well, what is it about me internally? What is it about the things I was taught growing up, the things that I was raised to believe, because that's a lot of what we're fighting against, is these ingrained grooves within our schema that we seem to slide down instinctually. We're trying to fight against those by deprogramming that, and then obviously raising the next generation of people to not have those toxic traits. Now I'm going to recommend 3 YouTubers that are great for listening to them and to deprogram that toxic masculinity, to help you to understand the various parts of yourself, because it's a continuing process, right? It never stops. We are raised within a society that has certain toxic traits that we hopefully have realized are toxic and are trying to fight against them. 3 channels that have helped me out: Thought Slime was really great, especially when it came to labor stuff for me. When I first started deprogramming, my wife and I can't figure out which one of us showed the other one Thought Slime. But great channel, got a lot of really good work, and he also pushes a lot of leftist content with his Eyeball Zone, which is actually what inspired my Gjallarhorn segment, where I try to shout out heathen and heathen adjacent creators. FD Signifier, another really great one for deprogramming toxic masculinity, was a teacher, so he's got a very easy to understand energy to him, and he's also really good at, if you're coming from the perspective of a white man, understanding and listening to a black person about their worldview, right? And another one, Foreign Man in a Foreign Land. He's one I've come to recently. He's Caribbean. He's got a lot of really interesting perspective, very entertaining videos as well. So he's got some really interesting editing techniques that are pretty cool. But he's also has a lot of really good videos specifically about deprogramming toxic masculinity. When trying to look into deprogramming yourself, when trying to look into understanding your bias, the biggest thing I can recommend is listening to people who aren't like you. People outside of your demographic. That's one of the things the right does. They do not listen to people outside of their demographic. They invalidate constantly. They invalidate when Black people talk about police violence. They invalidate when trans people talk about their problems. They invalidate when women talk about their problems. And that is a big problem on the right. And that is the problem I'm seeing with these debate bros on the left that think you need to shout down and ridicule every single person that slightly disagrees with you. I know it's the internet. I know it's Trollheim, but it's really important to deprogram, decolonize, and understand what you're actually fighting against. It's not the Georgina Roses of the world. It's the larger power structures and enforce the toxic mentalities that keep us in those metaphorical chains.